All right, everybody. This session, again, is called Let There Be Light, the Future of Holocaust and Human Rights Education. And the little bio here is through the Light Education Initiative, educators, which I think is many of us on this call, we have the power to inspire, to prepare, and to empower students for leadership roles in Holocaust, genocide, and human rights, education, remembrance, and advocacy. So today, in the next 20 minutes here, I'm going to introduce educators to this innovative and incentive-based approach. At any point, if you have any questions or if you want to reach out to me, there's my contact information. You can also find it on the Light Initiative website. And again, this session is being recorded. So a little bit of background information. My name is Nick Haberman, and I'm a social studies teacher in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I teach two classes right now. One is called the Holocaust Background, Tragedy, and Aftermath, and one is called Multicultural Studies, Multiculturalism, Human Rights, and Genocide. I'm a high school teacher, and in my school district and in much of Pennsylvania, to learn about the Holocaust in the level that I teach it is completely optional. And in many schools, there is not an option to learn about multiculturalism or to take a class on multicultural studies. So while some schools do study the Holocaust, maybe for a few days, it's rare for high school students ages 14 to 18 to have an opportunity to take a full semester on the Holocaust. And it's almost unheard of for them to have an optional full semester class on human rights and genocide. Additionally, I am a board member for Together We Remember, and David and I work very closely on human rights and genocide work, specifically motivated by Holocaust remembrance. And I am the founder and director of the Light Education Initiative, which is sponsored by the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh. They're the fiscal sponsor of the organization. So Light, just a basic overview, what I'm going to talk about. Light is sort of the yin to the yang of STEM. If you don't know what STEM is our approach in the United States to have all students focus on science and tech and engineering and math, and it's fantastic. However, what has happened is the opportunity cost of STEM in some schools means that some students never focus on remembrance. Some students never focus on advocacy related to human rights or genocide. Many students learn innovative skills, but they're never given real world problems to solve specifically in their community. And Light's goal, my goal, is to connect students to real world problems they can solve with the tools that we have given them, whether it's their cell phone or the skills that we have passed on to them. And that's why I chose to sit in my garage today amongst a bunch of tools, because I thought it doesn't matter what tools I have at my disposal. If I don't have anything to make, they're not going to get used and they're not going to make a difference. So if we train students to be the most innovative thinkers in the world and we never give them practice trying to tackle problems surrounding Holocaust and genocide and human rights, remembrance, or advocacy, then the students graduate having no experience and they spend the rest of their lives with the tools on the shelf and not in their hands. The Light Education Initiative is an acronym that stands for Leadership Through Innovation in Genocide and Human Rights Teaching. It's sponsored by the following organizations. The main one is the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh. So I am a part-time employee now of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, spending half my day focused on teaching students and the other half my day focused on this education initiative. Unfortunately, I am very motivated as of late to focus on Holocaust remembrance because Pittsburgh is now notorious for having the worst, most violent act of anti-Semitism in American history at the Tree of Life Synagogue, which is about 15 minutes away from where I'm sitting. What is Light? A basic overview of what Light is Light's a movement. It's a movement to inspire, to prepare, and to empower students, but also to incentivize genocide and human rights education. In Pennsylvania, where I live, there was a movement a few years ago to mandate Holocaust education, genocide education, human rights violations education. And the mandate really, it carried no weight. it pretty much fell through. It had the right intentions, but to mandate it meant that it was met with a lot of pessimism and negativity. And it wasn't given funding and it wasn't given support. And so what I did is I looked at that initiative and that attempt to mandate this. And I thought, people don't want to be told what to do. They want to be given a reward and an incentive, especially teachers who have so much on their plate. So Light was meant to, and is meant to, incentivize genocide and human rights education. Light is also a place. It's a space in schools that exists where students can collaborate to counter identity-based violence and discrimination, anti-Semitism and hate speech, both locally and globally. Light is the place in schools that is appropriate and that is the hub to really tackle racism and sexism and xenophobia and to talk about human rights. And it is the place where the resources can be held, the events can be planned. It's the place where students know that they can go to have a safe and a brave space to work on Holocaust, genocide, and human rights remembrance and advocacy. Light's also a network. It's a network of students, teachers, and community leaders just like this, bringing innovation to human rights advocacy and genocide prevention, education, and remembrance. And of course, Together We Remember is part of that network. And Light is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for students and teachers to connect with local, regional, and national programming, to connect with institutions and organizations. And it's not meant to be competitive. It's meant to be collaborative, embedding opportunities like this through existing infrastructure. For example, a school club or activity, or an organization like Together We Remember. Light gives Together We Remember a home in schools. Light gives the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh a home in my school. And it might give your organization a home in schools. So everybody has their light spark. My light spark was Jack Sitzheimer. He's the first Holocaust survivor I met. I brought him to my school and I had no experience teaching the Holocaust. It was my first year of teaching that I brought him in. I had no idea what I was talking about. I'm not Jewish, so I didn't grow up with these stories from my family members. The Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh gave me Jack's contact information. When I brought him in, he changed the lives of every student he spoke to and changed my life. And in the car on the way home, after he gave his presentation, he turned to me and said, "You know, I'm going to die soon. And when I do, it's up to you to tell my story." And that was my spark, realizing that I had to find a way to embed what Jack did in my school and in schools, even after I was done being a teacher. It didn't matter how good of a teacher I was at that moment. I was going to be gone someday. And when I left, none of what Jack did would be embedded in my school. Holocaust education is not sustainable without a space for it and without this approach. So the question is, what's your light spark? And holy cow, if you didn't get a light spark yesterday, you must not have been paying attention, because there were about 15 moments yesterday during this day one of our virtual summit. And obviously, if we click on the website and go to the agenda here, yesterday we heard from so many individuals. It started with Molly, of course, and then we just went down this list of speaker after speaker that made me and you have tears in our eyes, and it just gave us that passion that we needed to do something to change the game, to change our community, to change our approach, to change everything. So maybe yesterday was your spark to try to find ways to bring leadership to young people, because they're the ones that are taking over the world, not us. I'm old. My time has come and gone. The future of the world is in the hands of the young people, and it's up to us to help them to do this work. And yesterday we saw so many moments that inspired us. So Holocaust education, what's the present? And we got about 10 minutes to talk about this. So I'm just going to scratch the surface and hopefully connect you to my organization so we can work more together in the future. Right now, at least in the United States, students get many of these spark moments, but the opportunities for action are pretty rare. Holocaust centers and museums and other movements and foundations are really one and done. So the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh may touch the lives of students for one day, but then they're done. They don't have a home in the school to really keep doing this work. Right now, students are mainly just consumers. They're not producers, but they have the tools to produce. We're just not letting them and not giving them these opportunities. Right now, a lot of schools don't have that safe or that brave space where they can practice advocacy work. Right now in schools, we're even still focusing so much on content and so little on skills development. And right now we're still approaching education in this disposable way. And what this means is I spent so many years as a social studies teacher telling my students someday they had to write to their representatives. And I would give them assignments where they would write things down and then I'd throw them away. They'd make posters and then I'd throw them away. I'd ask them to give a lecture about sustainability to 15 people in the classroom and no one would ever hear it. So all their energy and effort was for naught. It didn't make a difference in their community. And I realized it's my fault. I have not connected them with organizations. I have not helped them put the stamps on the envelope to their representative. I've not brought in the people to the classroom that they can see and hear and speak to and work with after they graduate. It's my fault. And that is why Light was born, to really help other teachers have this infrastructure and foundation so they could easily do it. So the 3 tiers of Light, the basics is Light is a center in a school. It's the hub where Light programming can become part of this school environment. Light programming is this opportunity where students can bridge the gap between education and action and where they can get connected to their communities. And the Light coordinator is the person in the school that manages the Light Center and can plug into this network. The coordinator is the person that we actually give time to be an educational leader who's not a principal or a superintendent. We have athletics directors in a lot of schools in America that just focus on sports all day. We have activities directors that just focus on the musical and the clubs, but we don't have anybody in the school that permanently helps connect students to social justice, to environmental justice, to human rights, to genocide remembrance. We need that. And it's simple and it doesn't cost a lot of money. So the Light Center at my school is just a space that's dedicated to this work with student artwork on the walls and quotes to remind us how to live our lives. And these quotes are from Holocaust survivors and survivors of other genocides and human rights violations. Programming in my Light Center is surrounding community remembrance events and education events, arts and writing competitions, civic engagement, genocide and atrocity awareness campaigns, school Holocaust memorial creation. Programming sometimes it takes the form of a community education remembrance event where students are the ones running the show and where we give the community a menu to follow where they can pick and choose. Because I spent years bringing in Holocaust survivors and never once thought to let the students bring their parents. It wasn't until a student said, man, my dad said he really wished he could come meet that survivor. And I said, oh man, I really dropped the ball. This is my fault. There's no reason your dad can't come. That's my fault. This needs to be a community event because the community wanted to learn. The students wanted to connect to the larger audience, but I wasn't giving them the framework and the freedom to do so and to take charge and to run the show. And the Light coordinator, again, is the person who does this work, really just the coach. Students have many different coaches in their lives, many mentors. That's the Light coordinator. Light alumni in my school, in my experience, have said that it changed their life. It showed them there's so much they can do in their communities that makes a huge impact to touch people's lives. Another student said being part of this gave them a sense of purpose and pride, and they could focus or they could watch as their hard work paid off in ways far greater than grades, which we tell them all the time. It's not just about grades. This shows them it's not just about grades. And another student said the lessons they learned through Light transcended their high school career, and they used examples of their work with Light on employment applications as well as academic papers in college. So through Light, the future of Holocaust education that I see is one where Holocaust, genocide, and human rights education is the focus, not just the Holocaust, but the Holocaust is the spark. It's the foundation. It's the bedrock. It has, unfortunately, the reputation of being the most well-documented genocide, the most taught genocide. So we use that as the foundation and apply those lessons to contemporary genocides and human rights violations. And we teach students how they can transform Holocaust remembrance into action for victims now. I see the future of Holocaust education as opportunities for action supported by light coordinators, where students are the producers. They're not just the consumers. Where schools have dedicated spaces for this work, whether it's a light center or whether it's something better that comes along another day in the future. But I haven't found that thing, and that's why I created it. And so I'm doing my best to share it and to spread it. And it brings sustainability to this work in schools so that when I'm gone from my school, there's still a space. If I left teaching tomorrow, the school would look and say, well, what are we going to do with this light center and this light coordinator duty? I guess we got to bring somebody else into that role and into that position because we have the space. We made the capital improvement. We invested in the program. We got to keep it going, whether we want to or not, because in public education and private, we know a lot of things are done just because that's the way they've always been done. And so what I'm trying to do is show schools that light can be the way that it's always done. Also, light's open sourced. Schools all have limitations. They all have challenges. And that's why I created something that can either be a club, a duty, a teaching period. It can be anything. It's open sourced. It's just an approach. And it's skills over content and or content through skills, where teachers are the coaches of the students. And if you want to use educational jargon, where we are creating these culminating curricular-based anchor points, where we're helping students build up to this moment where they say, oh, I get it. I understand now why I've spent so much time learning about the Holocaust, because I just met a survivor of a contemporary genocide or human rights violation, and it clicked, and I need to do something. And oh, here's how I can. So what am I leaving you with? Because everybody always needs to have these action items, or else you've just learned a lot and you have no outlet. So I'm going to give you two outlets here, two things you can do. Number one, of course, is the shameless self-promotion that for no money, you can sign up to be a Light school. And I'm actually going to tell you that not only is it free to become part of Light, but as of today, I've given away over $25,000 through different foundations and organizations. And the goal is to give away a lot more. And I think more importantly, to plug people into this Light network and then give them the professional development so that they have the skills to apply for their own grants to support this program and to build it and grow it. All I'm trying to do is plant a seed. And oftentimes I'm even going to give you the money to plant your own seed. So I'll do my best to help you build and grow this network, and you can plug into it and get the training. And also jump on board Light programming, and Together We Remember is a perfect example of something that becomes Light programming for students. Also, I will help you connect your school to fundraising opportunities through Light, because that's what it's really all about, is getting students to raise money for their communities. And lastly, the brand new website's coming soon, which will be a tool for students and educators to use to connect with one another. The second is to use your Light spark to transform remembrance into action by asking yourself these really important questions. How do we use our spark to create new opportunities or to connect to existing organizations? How can we embed human rights and genocide education, remembrance, and advocacy in schools and communities? And how can we coach and support the next generation of changemakers to use the tools that we have given them, including sometimes their privilege, to leave their communities better than they found them? Again, my name's Nick Haberman. I'm a teacher and I run the Light Education Initiative. If you would like to become a part of it, visit lightinitiative.org or send me an email. And with that said, I do believe it is now time to move on to the next session. So thank you for your time. Thank you for becoming a part of this summit. And thank you for joining me. I'll talk to you real soon.